Alright, so you're wanting to play Whiteout Survival. I'm going to give you a couple of bonus tips, but also kind of what the game is like. So, the game itself is basically, think of it kind of like any strategy pay to win title, alright? But starting out, you're going to have basically these survivors. It's kind of like The Sims, but a lot toned down. You don't get to name them, and more or less, they're little peons that really just kind of make more they're more annoying than they are anything, and believe me, you don't get to live with them very long. They don't last. We're gonna go ahead and skip through a lot of the tutorial bits and pieces here, but basically, it's just gonna point and direct you in the starting phase of this as to what you need to do. Like, hey, you need to build this, you need to build that. But here's a couple of things you probably need to know out of the gate. Okay, see how this little building here? You've got a little yellow icon. Click on this, and you want to change this to fancy meals. This is going to make your food go down faster. However, they're going to have a fuller stomach and they're not going to be as pissed off and they'll work longer. You also want to upgrade these buildings because the interiors are going to increase the stat of your survivors and therefore they're going to make them less prone to being a pain in the rear down the road. Okay, the other thing is you need to build these little buildings. So you'll just go through here and just create your buildings real quick. And then you want to get into the habit of basically clicking and opening these chapters. That's really about all you need to do. Welcome, King Ghost and Alties. Hello, hello. But so anyway, so once you've gone through and done that bit of it, then you'll just go ahead and upgrade your furnace. And once you do that, it'll ask you to appoint people. So I'll just go ahead and appoint. Go to Survivor tab and appoint. Let's repeat. Now, the one thing you'll notice is there's this little tab down here called Max Power. You want to turn this on because this is what keeps them warm, and obviously the longer they're warm, the less prone they are to be a pain in the rear. So again, it's just one of those things. You just kind of want to have that turned on out of the get-go because you just don't want to have to deal with it down the road anyway. Of course, you'll get some bonus stuff just for coming in and playing the game. But pretty much, then from here, it'll tell you, oh, hey, you need to do this. So you got to go out and do that. And so we'll go ahead and upgrade it. And then go ahead and upgrade, claim, close that, and then upgrade again. And that's pretty much a majority of what you'll spend a lot of your time doing in this game is more or less just upgrading. Upgrade, upgrade, upgrade. Mass upgrade. There's a lot of upgrading. But eventually this does get to where it is, how do you say, the amount of time invested versus what it'll take you to do is going to eventually require money, right? That's kind of the end goal with a lot of these games, but I will tell you that you really won't start to feel it until about a week into the game. So you can kind of rest assured you can play this game free for the most part. You really don't have to put, if any, money into the game at all. There are people that do, but naturally, of course, it'll ask you for an employment queue, and all this is if you pay like, I don't know, let's take a look. We can get like a little bonus. Well, we won't have the store just yet because they're being nice to us, but eventually they do want money to fork over having more than one construction going at any one time. Is it necessary? Do you absolutely have to have it? No. But does it make things go faster? Yes. Of course, the game will point out to you where to go or what to do as you're going along. But again, the general rule of thumb here is upgrade, 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 and then upgrade to the next thing. It's pretty much 90% of the game. But yeah, it's a lot of upgrading buildings. Of course, here we'll get some survivors. The answer to this is always yes. The answer is not no. Don't don't be that guy. Be like, oh yes, I'm gonna reject. I don't like you, and I'm gonna get rid of you. Of course, this is where it tells you to check your survivor stats and stuff. This is relevant starting out in the beginning, but it's not as relevant long term. Like, you really don't need to sweat this as much. Of course, the blizzards are a thing that you do want to keep an eye on, but if you keep on max power on, then you don't need to sweat it as much. Of course, we're gonna skip around a little bit, so don't mind the story bit here, but snowstorms, when a warning comes up, that just means you need to have some coal, or you need to have, in this case, timber. But let's just go ahead and get the coal mine made, because coal is primarily what powers your furnace in the middle. And so you want to get this operational pretty quickly, because otherwise you're going to have a really bad time. I want to make sure you got survivors in there doing their job, getting that coal, because otherwise problems ensue. But anyway, so we'll go ahead and do that. Go ahead and use our food and upgrade this. Because again, if we're gonna get any timber, if we're gonna get any food, you gotta upgrade, 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 upgrade. Basically, the rinse repeat feature of this game. But naturally, if you're wanting to know what heroes to focus on, if you're looking at heroes, we'll get into it here in a second. But basically, if you're starting out, the first hero you're going to get access to pretty easily is Molly, but don't spend mythic shards on Molly. You'll get almost all of your shards from Molly completely free. You don't even need to spend your mythic shards on Molly. If it were me, my recommendation would be to actually save those mythic shards for things like maybe a certain hero down the road. And it takes a lot to really kind of, sequester enough shards to really find yourself in a good place to max them out. It's about 600 shards total. So you don't want to upgrade willy-nilly either. You don't want to like spread yourself thin. I'm of the opinion that if you pick a hero, stick to it. Especially if you're free to play. Because if you spread yourself thin, you're just going to be a jack of none rather than good in one thing. Which, I don't know, for some people is neither here nor there, but it's one of those things. It does amount to something. You do want to save your gems, though. Like, you've noticed I haven't spent any of my gems. You don't want to spend gems in this game. You want to save your gems. And I'll get into why here in a bit, but the main thing is you want to go through and just do these chapter missions, starting out. Do the requirements for your furnace, and then rinse repeat. But you don't want to like hit finish 40. You just wait the 3 minutes. Be patient. Don't get in a habit of thinking that, I'm going to use gems for upgrades. The moment you do that, you'll be wasting gems very quickly. And that's kind of silly when you don't have to. But, in the grand scheme of things, like I said, the main thing here is you want to make sure that you're upgrading your buildings consistently. As your furnace upgrades, then so too do the shelters need upgrading. And so that's just kind of what the rinse and repeat feature is. So what I recommend you do with gems, right, is you want to wait for events. It's kind of the way to go about that. I really don't suggest using your gems until events come around. And the only time where it really makes sense is like Lucky Wheel. Like Lucky Wheel's one of those events where you can use your gems for Lucky Wheel and you'll get basically more hero shards for that hero on the wheel, which is a better investment for your gems than it is on like speed ups and stuff like that. Like, yes, you can go in and buy stuff from the VIP store if you want to, if you've got a certain VIP level. But a lot of people, what they do is they'll dump their gems into VIP. And there's no reason not to, because it's really about the only other way you're going to progress it if you're not spending. Obviously, people that spend are going to have their own, how do you say, they're going to get VIP points just for buying packs. That's kind of what determines a lot of high-level players, is that you can tell just because when you look at their VIP level, if it's like level 10 plus, they've been spending. That said, one thing that, we just got over there is this suggestion box. Basically what this is this is a meter of how happy your people are, or your survivors. You want to try and not make them super, what's the word for it? Pissed off. So you want to try to keep these people happy, and they'll give you like SOS messages from time to time. And generally, there's a running logic to it, but basically it comes down to A, can you do this and make sure people are in line? And B, can you make sure that this gets done X, Y, and Z, right? And they'll give you little gym rewards from time to time, but the main thing is you want to keep them in positive, happy mood. Because if they get pissed off at you, that's going to make your life a living hell. It's going to be a reduction in resource production. It's going to be a reduction in a lot of different things. It's not a good time. When you lose survivors, it's just as bad, so you definitely don't want that. That said, What my plans with this account is we're actually in 631, so we're going to join an alliance called OSD, which there's a couple of people in the current alliance that I'm in, which is in 467, and I'm currently in FKN, and I can kind of go into that. There's a whole story that kind of happened over the week. I can kind of go into detail about that, but sticking on cue to this, okay, this is where we finally get to the heroes portion of this game now. So now I can kind of show you what the exploration tab is all about. So this is where basically you're going to get steel, and you're also going to get basically every day you're going to do exploration, right? Early game starts out like anybody prior to F30, I think. Furnace 30s, like anyone prior to Furnace 30s early game. Mid game is like anybody between Furnace level 1 through 3, and late game is anyone past Furnace level 3. Okay, now, if you don't know what I mean, there's, how do you say, there's Furnace level 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 30. Then you have Fire Crystal levels 1 through 5, and then 6, 7, 8. Most people will get line locked from Furnace level 1 to 3, then 4, 5, 6, and then eventually you get to 7 and 8 and so on. The problem is you can only go up to so many certain levels depending on how old your state is. So this is something else. This is a general rule of thumb, but basically your server has an age to it. And your monument will tell you what age your state is, but the main thing you need to know about it is that basically the state that you're in will unlock things progressively over time. And as it does, you will have access to new events and things that will come through. So like if you've played Lords Mobile, they have a KBK. If you played Rise of Kingdoms, I'm trying to think of even a couple of other games, but basically they have a server versus server event that happens about 80-ish, 90-ish days into the game. So you've got some time before then, but all of it is up to a build point to where you get to that point. And then once you get to that point, then it's just there's a cycle of basically building up to that event, fighting, and then starting over, building up to that event, starting, fighting, and starting over. But now, do you lose everything at the end of it? No, it's just a progressive rebuild, because you end up losing a ton of troops. But the main thing here is, so like there, I just lost. The basic gist with exploration here is that you're going to earn steel, and you'll have to claim after a certain number of points. After a certain point, it'll eventually give you access to Hero XP and steel. You're going to go and basically do these events as you go through the stages, and each stage is followed up with a boss, and that's what this little red icon is. And basically every stage you just keep fighting through the explorer's cabin to basically acquire steel, and use steel to upgrade both your buildings but also do research. So there's a big reason for that. Now the one thing that you'll notice is, so you can see I'm getting steel and I'm also using steel, right? Of course you'll acquire shelters, but the main thing you want to do is you want to staff your clinic, because this is going to be helping for any of your survivors that actually end up getting sick. Now, one of the problems you're going to find is that if your survivors have nothing to do, they get bored, and therefore they get mad and upset and cranky. When they get upset, mad, and cranky, what'll happen oftentimes is you'll have the survivor for the clinic get pissed off because she has nothing to do because there are no sick survivors. So then you can unassign her and leave her be. And then when you have 6 survivors, then you go and reassign her and she'll be happy. You just don't want to leave survivors assigned to a job in which they do absolutely jack all, because then they get pissed off. So, it's a tiny detail that they don't really tell anybody, but, it's like one of those things I can easily see why people miss it, because it's not really point blank there for you. That said, we're going to go ahead and upgrade our survivor shelters. And again, for those that missed it, basically you just want to click on this little icon here. Make sure you set your fancy meal on. It's a super helpful thing. You want to make sure you get that. The other thing, and this is something that even novice to average players don't know, you can actually click on this little icon up here. This will tell you what your power is what your kills are, what your training speed is, which is going to tell you how fast your troops are going to train. It'll tell you what your core stats are and what your defender's attack and defenses bonus are. It'll also tell you your construction speed and research speed. These are all relevant because obviously construction speed dictates how fast your buildings will upgrade. And then the construction speed up and such is also going to kind of, a lot of this stuff is relevant because it pays dividends in the long term. Like your march queue is going to be how many troops you train at a time. Your deployment capacity is how many troops you can actually send at a time. A lot of that, we'll get into it, but basically the command center, which is over here, will dictate like how many troops you send and how many you can rally with. Again, there's so much information here I can kind of spill on. But the main thing is you can go into the power tab here. It'll tell you your rating in relation to your furnace and everybody in the state. The other thing too is you can also click on enhance, and then it'll just take you straight to where it thinks you need to upgrade. The main thing with the game though in general, like you might have noticed, you get a chief, and you can then change your chief to say like Bati if you want to. And you can just change the icon. You can also change your icon by hitting upload, and you can actually upload a picture off your phone if you want to. Of course, the first thing you always want to do is rename your character. So like here, I'll just rename myself to Dakanoth. Use a rename card to do it. And then I can also join an alliance. This is also where you get to the leaderboard, your troops, and the skins. So this is all stuff that, is super helpful. Of course, if you ever want to change states or anything like that, you can go to settings, go to characters, and then here you can pick a state number. So like, hey, you want to be in 467, you just create a new character on your phone, type in the state number, and then you can just create a character there. So you don't actually have to be landlocked to the state you're in. Now, the only problem is obviously a lot of people have wondered, well, how do I take a character that I've already have in my state and move to a new one? Well, up until about now, they haven't allowed you to actually do that until recently. And I believe from state 1 to 90, there's this thing called state transfer, and that's what that is. Of course, that's not relevant for most people because most people are probably not in those first couple dozen states. So not a lot of people have seen state transfer yet. Will it be a thing for most states? Probably, but like anything, you'll get what is called a state transfer pass. And then there's a whole spiel that I can get into on that. But honestly, you're probably better just join Whiteout Survival Discord for that kind of information, because there's more there that I honestly couldn't even just tell you. But all I can tell you is that there's a president of every state, and that president helps kind of dictate who gets in and out of their state. There's power caps, and then the cost of the state passes is also pretty significant depending on how much power you have. So there's a lot there. Kind of free to play survive in this game, you can, but the biggest problem is just like any pay to win game. If you get 1 or 2 whales, they can ruin it very easily. I mean, yeah, you can play free to play in this game for the first week or two, probably pretty well. I've seen players play free to play for months and hell, probably a year into this game and never had a problem. But it all has to do with the fact that if you're on the receiving end of an attack, which is to say that if you're not in one of the first top 10 alliances, chances are you're probably going to be the bully pin for somebody. And that's the only sad, kind of crummy part about this game. Is that, yes, just like a lot of your pay-to-win games, yes, there are whales, and yes, there are people that can make your life a living hell and not make it fun. So yes, if that's what you're afraid of, then yes, it is there. Okay, it's just like any of the just like any of the pay-to-win games. I will say though that from my experience, where is the money in this game, or where the whales are in this game? You don't really see it when you're starting out, but when you hit furnace level 22, you get something called chief gear, and then shortly after that, I think it's like furnace level 25, but don't quote me on this, you get charms. Okay, chief gear and charms are pretty much the most expensive pieces in the game outside of hero gear and the heroes themselves. Like for the most part, like every hero to max out is like $600-ish, $400-ish, roughly. And the widgets themselves to max out to level 10 is like $200 to $300. And I can get into what those are here in a bit, but that's a whole spiel in itself. I've been there, done that. I'm one of the few people who can say I've spent 15K, so I can tell you. pretty with some accuracy, even how much certain skins are in the game. So I can kind of show you about all of that here in a second. Let's just go to the world tab here. I can do that once we get to Furnace 7, it says. So I can show you more. But so like here's the hero hall. This is basically where you just get free shards. And this is part of the reason why I was telling you earlier, you can get Molly completely free. And it's because of the hero hall. Because you'll get her shards from here. You can get this completely free. You don't have to spend any of your mythic shards on Molly. It's a waste, in fact, to spend your mythic shards on Molly. If you play it 1 hour a day, is it worth it? Depending on what you're after. You know, if you're wanting a game to just kill time and enjoy it, it's not like Clash of Clans where it's going to be at your own pace. You're obviously going to be behind the less you play the game. So if you're not playing it, I would say in excess of 4 or 5 hours a day, you're going to find that you're going to be behind pretty massively. So for that reason, I would say probably not. Like if you're playing it in an hour a day, I think you'll find yourself like really far behind in probably 4 days, and you won't really notice it. And then by the time you actually do, it sucks. Now this here, this is where you unlock Molly. So if you unlock, play the game for like 2 days, you'll get Molly. And Molly's basically one of the very first Lancer heroes that you get in the game. Now, what I mean by Lancer is there are 3 unit types in the game. You have Marksman, Infantry, and Lancers. Now, the main thing you need to know is Marksman will beat Infantry, Infantry will beat Lancers, Lancers will beat Marksman. Okay? That's the simplicity of how easy this game is. You don't need to overcomplicate it. There are no troop formations. There's no, assigning of different formations to do certain things in that regard. Now, in Arena, it's a different deal. I'll explain that a little bit more here in a bit. But the basic gist is that unit type beats this unit type. And generally speaking, what people recommend doing is just evening out your troops. You will often lose a lot of infantry because they're in the front all the time. So a lot of people will build a lot of infantry in excess. Then they'll build a lot of marksmen, and then they'll build Lancer in that order because of where they are in alignment, because basically it goes infantry, marksmen, and then lancers in that order. Okay, obviously if you have a lot of lancers in a formation, it'll kill their marksmen, and therefore their army will not have a good enough time beating your infantry. You can start to understand where the strategy is here. I mean, that is to say that typically when people are defending, they have a lot of lancers. When they're attacking, they have a lot of marksmen. And that's really the only adjusting they do in the compositions of their attacks. But generally speaking, we'll get into it more, but there's a whole mentality in the attack stats. And we'll get into that too, because the way this game handles the stats are a little weird. And I don't know. I can get into the, whether or not should states be populated and all that later, but again, it's a whole different spiel in itself. Like I could go into it in depth, and it's one of those things where I call it power creep, but basically what'll happen is like a game like Lords Mobile. I've played that game for shy of 7 years. Okay, this game I've played for about 120-ish days, roughly. What I can tell you is what happens when you have a lot of state creep is you'll have a lot of players that will get confined to these states. And basically what'll happen is obviously as players leave, the population in those states gets shrinker and smaller and smaller. And eventually it's just you and maybe a handful of other people, right? That obviously gets very boring. And so a lot of time investment, money investment, you name it, seems pretty pointless. Until you get the concept of something like a state transfer where you can then take that account, move it to a new state. Or you can take a bunch of your friends and put yourself in the same state, vice versa. However you want to play the game, right? The point being is that until that really comes into fruition and becomes more common, I don't think a lot of players that are in those cul-de-sacs of dead states are ever going to find the game all that great, because it's like, well, I can't do anything, and I'm always getting paired up against players that are better than me. What do I do? We can get into that, but again, that's what I call power creep. It's just basically what happens is there's kind of like a yield curve, and that the longer the game is, more access you have, the more likely it is for people to have better stuff than you. And then you have the money curve, which is obviously the amount of people that have spent, and the one or two people that have spent a stupid amount, right? And then you're having to kind of gauge where you are in that. And I have a lot of the state killers, right, are the few whales that have spent so much and then killed everyone below them. And then obviously they leave, and that perpetuates an endless cycle of tyranny and horrible, horrible things, right? Of course, one of the biggest challenges I think in a lot of these games is actually how they handle the toxicity of the gaming environment itself. You don't see a lot of it in this game, but there's not a whole lot of botting. I've seen some of it, but not a lot. But there's even that, and then just straight up like how people interact. I've actually seen some really terrible conversations between people, and in this game, it's some of it's pretty bad. But again, I'm not going to go at length. I'm just going to say it's out there. Um, I'm not going to go into specifics on who, where, and how. I just know it's out there. Like, some states are pretty bad. That said, again, this is what it looks like. So basically, you get steel and XP, and then you just go and hit explore. Eventually, you get to a point where you can hit quick deploy. Eventually, you'll have enough heroes that you can actually dictate where the formation is. But this goes back into arena. But basically, generally speaking, when you actually get to arena, what you want is 2 infantry in the front, and then you can either have 2 lancers or 2 marksmen. Right? And typically when you're fighting other players, you'll find that they'll either have 2 infantry, and sometimes they'll have 1 infantry, but if they do, they're doing it wrong, because you can almost always beat them with 2 infantry. But the main thing is that you'll see guys up here that'll have, either 2 lancers or 2 marksmen, and then they'll have a power rating. And don't be discouraged by the power rating, at least initially, because a lot of people are still pretty weak. But long term, you'll eventually start to gauge how well you are off and chances of winning based on this. But it's not the end all. Like, obviously, if you have 3 marksmen and 3 lancer and 2 infantry and 2 infantry, who's going to win? Well, the lancers are obviously going to beat the marksmen because they have a bonus, and therefore, there's a whole spiel I can get into with that. But that's the basic gist of just the formations in arena. Like, but this is exploration, and you'll do it in exploration too. Eventually you'll get access to auto, where it'll just automatically do this. You'll also get double speed, which makes it go by faster. And again, you'll get rewards and stuff as you go through it, so there's not really a whole lot much to it other than that. Okay, you have Sergei as infantry, and next best infantry is Smith. Should I use Jesse or Smith? Well, so to answer your question, a lot of the people that are trying to pick out, like, whether or not should I use this or that, right, in terms of what hero, I can show you. But the basic gist of it is, right, if you use an infantry hero, the quality of the hero tier is going to be very relevant here. So, like, if it's an epic hero, okay, great. But then is it 3 stars, 2 stars, 1 star? What skill level? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? And then what skill is it, right? Because one thing that you need to understand about this game in terms of how it applies skills is, okay, let's say you join a march. Do you get these skills? No. What happens is you have damage taken down, and that's the skill that gets provided to the rally. So if you join someone's rally, this is the skill that you're contributing to the rally, okay? And then these skills down here, like any of the ones on the side, if you were going to rally, those are the skills that then get brought in. Okay. Now, if you're going into the game not knowing, well, what hero should I use? Like, if I'm using Sergei, why do you use Sergei? Well, you use Sergei because he's bringing your damage down, and then he's bringing the enemy troop down. So a lot of people will tell you to use Sergei because that's a reduction in your, obviously you want to reduce damage. It's good for defense. But is it really good for anything outside of that? No. Like, if you're going around and attacking, it's a whole different thing. Now, in arena, okay, if you're going to choose between using somebody like Smith, I mean, you have area damage and a 30% damage taken down. Because again, the only thing that matters in arena then is just the exploration skills. So when you're looking at exploration skills, you just need to kind of gauge, for one thing, right? You have the skill level itself, right? But then there's also the stats. So this also plays a factor in it. You need to pay very close attention to what the health is, what the attack is here, because this is what's going to tell you that answer of whether to use this or not. Because you'll look at Sergey and you can look at Smith, right? And there's 1440, 72, 120, 17, right? And then I can even look at the skills. Like if I had the skills at 30% damage taken down, 15% defense up, and a 280 area of effect, and you compare that to Smith, where you're getting a 280 effect and then a 30% taken down, you're losing on that 15% on defense up. But again, this assumes that you have those skills. You know, now if you don't, then it becomes a question of, well, then what quality is the hero at? You know, do you have them at 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, 4 star? That's how you're going to determine that. And again, the main thing being is knowing, you know, in terms of what that skill has to provide. You know, and in terms of area of effect goes, I would say, depending on what the star level is, I would probably almost always center on Sergey, probably. You know, and then if you were to go to... Yeah, you can ask questions. You're more than happy to. I mean, the main point of this video is that we're going to basically kind of go through everything you need to know about this game. So this is going to be kind of a general guide for free-to-play players, pay-to-win players, you name it. You know, like I'm just going to mind dump the hell out of almost everybody here, because that's just what I can do. But what I can tell you is that first skill is incredibly important in rallies, and the main reason for it is so, like, when you're attacking, a lot of people are going to use Jesse, in part because you're getting a 25% increase to your damage for all troops. Okay, that's very key there. Is 25% for all troops when joining rallies. Okay, now what happens when I send a rally? Well, if you send a rally, then again, why I mentioned that, okay, is the rally captain gets to bring all 3 of these skills in. That's why it's important. It's also incredibly relevant that when you have one of these heroes, you have, in the case of SSR, right, they have what is called a widget. All right, the widget itself, we'll get into it when I can actually show you hero gear, but I don't even have that yet. But basically, hero gear, you can actually get. There's the whole thing on that too. You know, there's like hero essence. There's basically chief gear, right, which goes onto your character profile, which is an amplifier or a boon to your main account's attack, right? And then there's charms, which increase the lethality and the health. All right. The main thing you need to know regarding that, as far as the stats go, and I guess this would be easier to help explain, but imagine for a moment, attack is what is going to get applied whenever you're attacking the unit. So if the infantry attack is higher than, say, like, and this goes back to thinking, okay, inf beats this beats that. You got to think in terms of what is going to match against what. So if you're running against someone else's infantry, for example, and your infantry attack is higher than their defense and their lancer defense is lower, right? Then you're going to have that infantry attack, every percentage above that is then going to apply that lethality. And that lethality stat's going to apply against their health. So obviously your infantry attack is getting cut away from the defense stat that they have, and vice versa. So there's actually kind of like a whole, how do you say, a dogma of thinking here in terms of what beats what in terms of these stats. But basically, lethality is cutting into health in the same way attack is cutting into defense. Okay? And so typically what makes the player that has the best benefits or the most fun or vice versa is the guy that has the highest amount of attack and the highest amount of health in a perfect world, right? And obviously having a lot of lethality is just a boon to what that attack can do on top of that, right? The lethality stat is more or less what's going to contribute the most after that attack stat gets through the defense. Having a very high lethality and a very high attack would be like, you know, your attack bonus things and your defense bonus things are your HP and your defense, right? So it's just kind of finding a balance between those is the real tricky thing. But again, you know, it's, oh boy, can we go into detail about that? And that's even something that, you know, it's widely talked about on a regular basis because certain heroes have changed and such, and so there's a whole different like spiel I can get into. It's like you hear how I've used steel to upgrade. The one problem with using steel is that eventually you will run out of steel, and the only way to get steel is through exploration, unless you are spending. There are packs. They will obviously find things to incentivize you to spend, and that's just kind of the way these games are. But anyway, so like here, I'll go ahead and upgrade, and then this is your star levels, so we'll go ahead and upgrade, get a star level, and then that's going to add to the percentage of attack and defense. The main thing that you need to know in the game, too, is that like epics compared to these golds are going to be better than your epics in terms of when they're maxed out. There's about a shy like 40% gain from every tier above it. So like from epic to gold's going to be a lot stronger, obviously, but there's also going to be a lot more work involved. And these are just what we call Gen 1 heroes. As I was telling you earlier, the state grows as it grows and gets older. You have access to new heroes. You'll have access to new things. And as that comes in, when you get a new set of heroes, those are what we call Gen 2, and those are better than these heroes here, which are your Gen 1. So as the game progresses, you're actually slowly but surely getting nerfed. That's one thing that free-to-play have to keep in mind. This is why you tend to want to save everything as a free-to-play, because not everything in your heroes is going to actually pay dividends in the long term. What's your thoughts on Philly's post-nerf? As far as I can tell, a lot of what she was used for before was more for garrisons and defending, and now it's not as helpful to have a defense up as opposed to a health up. Now, I will say that compared to post-nerf to pre-nerf, it's like before it made a lot of sense to use Philly as a Lancer hero, but looking at it now, if I had to choose for a Lancer, which one do I pick? I still pick, over, a Molly, for example. I would still rather have Philly in there because there's a 40% gain in the attack stat when she's actually maxed out, right? And the only other problem with Molly is that she's providing a stun chance, and stun chance doesn't contribute anything to a defense in any way, right? That's one of the biggest problems that you have with Molly. Now, if we get into like the widgets portion of it, I can kind of go into detail about this, but there's still more bonuses in the widget that I feel that are warranted for Philly that I would rather have. But, again, it's not even, I need to like pull up my main account to really kind of look at the widgets under detail because I can't quite remember between Molly and her Philly's widget. I can't quite remember what the difference was. I remember one doing one and trying to remember it, and I can't with this small account. So we'll get into that probably. If I hop on my main, I can show that. Anyway, so we'll go ahead and accept our next survivor here. Of course, as you can see, we're kind of running low on coal here. We never want to run out of food. We never want to run out of coal. Two things we don't want to have happen. Because if there's anything that can go horribly wrong, it's to have a snowstorm and run out of coal, and then everybody gets cold and they get sick and die. That would be bad. And the other problem is, obviously, if you don't have food, that would be another problem. You don't want to have that situation occur either. Neither one of those situations are ones that you want to have happen. You want to avoid that at all costs when you're starting out. That's a place for a lot of pain starting out. Obviously, you have to upgrade a lot of things, though, and so it is kind of easy to do this, and this is why you've got to be kind of careful. Don't want to do anything too rash. But yeah, again, there's a lot more I can show, and once we get to Furnace 5, it looks like I can kind of I can elaborate more on this. But basically, the main thing is hero gear is kind of a boon to you in terms of arena. Like a lot of people don't realize that the hero gear that you have, right? You have your gray tier, blue tier, epic gear, and then you have your mythic legendary pieces of gear for your individual heroes, right? The main thing you need to know is that you want to save your arena points that you earn every day, and you want to use them for the boxes that get you mythic gear. It's a super, super helpful thing that will build your account over time. You don't want to spend those arena points on anything else. Arguably, I would recommend just saving them for that alone. I even to this day still do it. I've yet to change because the part of the reason why is because when you unlock Mastery Forging, which is where you get into Hero Essence Stones, you need to use Hero Essence Stones up till 5 for a single piece of gear on Mythic. And then you want to do the next set to 5, and the next set to 5. And you only need 3 sets of gear, 1 for infantry, 1 for your marksmen, and 1 for your lancers. Do not build multiple sets. A lot of people do that. Don't do that. Because the reason why is because you can always switch those 3 sets when you're going into PvP. So if you need to go and defend, you swap your gear, put it on a defensive hero. You don't need, like, to try and spread yourself out thin. Because when you do that, you're going to find that you're going to be weaker than the guy that had just invested in just 3 sets. It's a lot easier to do it that way than it is to spread yourself out thin, thinking you're going to get good in Arena. The people that are going to get good in Arena are the guys who have all the money. And if you think you're going to compete with them, unless you got the money, good luck. Now, as far as joining alliances go, generally just take whoever will actually bring you in. But if anything, find the people that you get along with. Because again, this is a social game. You know, I'm of the opinion that, like a lot of these pay-to-play games, right? You talk to people, have fun, enjoy getting to know other people from other parts of the world. And if anything, that to me is more of the experience than it is, you know, thinking too hard on whether or not am I in the best alliance. Okay, you can micromanage that if you want to. And if your answer is I want to be in the top war guild, then always go after the alliance that's the biggest and the best, right? You can always go after the guild that has the most stuff. And therefore you can basically milk off of all of the rewards from the spenders because they're going to have lots of chests and therefore you're going to get lots of loot. But, you know, like anything, if you're inactive or you're not on all the time, then the chances of you getting kicked are pretty high. So, I mean, it's one of those things that unless you're committed to a constant cycle of, you know, how do you say that, keep up with the Jonas's mentality and you're not, you know, wanting to spend, I don't suggest it. But you can do that. It's just, I am of the opinion that you'll have a better experience playing these games if you're looking for friends than you are looking for someone that's going to make your life easier, or you're looking for a handout. You know, it's like, that's what you're aiming for. You're going to have a hard time. I'm going to be honest. It never ends well, because the guy that hops from guild to guild, people don't like that very much. Not that they don't pay attention, you know, it's like people are people. I'm just saying. It's out there, man. It's not something to be completely ignored. It's something that you know, okay, so like here you can unlock it permanently, and so for $3, now here's the top-up center. And this is what I was telling you about. So like here you can buy packs going up to $100 in US currency. Now it does depend. It's region based. So depending on where you live, this could be higher, could be lower. And it also depends on, you know, are you on Apple or are you on Google? You know, so even though this says $100, you got to apply like a 7% tax rate, sales tax to that. So it's more like $107 if you're going through Google Play. So I'm just throwing that out there. Like, part of the reason why this game is so expensive is because of that. It's really more in the taxes than it is anything else. But even then, do I recommend it? For most everyday people, probably not. You know, unless your pockets are light and you're willing to throw your wallet to a child and watch it disappear. You know, the stories of someone waking up and going, I lost $60,000. Like, yeah, these are the games where your kid lost $60,000 playing a mobile game. This is that game. These are these kind of games. Okay? Like Lords Mobile, Rise of Kingdoms, Whiteout Survival. They're all of that same breed of game, evening, all of them. All part of that same crowd. And there are obviously very bad things that can happen to if you're not careful. And I only say that because I feel like the common sense should be there, but yet somehow people completely bypass the common sense. And then when it finally hits them, they go, oh. And it's just bad news from there. No, I'm sure, you know, it's like, I'm sure that You know, they probably don't want me saying that, but it's the truth. Do I have a Discord? Yes, I do, actually. I have it linked in the description, so you're welcome to join the Discord if you'd like. I do, from time to time, post in there. I believe I've got a button that it'll post every time I upload a new video, so if you're having trouble with YouTube notifications for any reason, you can always go there. I do play a lot of other games other than mobile games, obviously. I've been playing a game called Vintage Story, Beyond All Reason, Bannerlord Online, Chivalry 2, Hearts of Iron 4, Lethal Company, The Great War Western Front, and the new Call of Duty that just came out. And Fortnite. I also got BattleBit, and I do have Escape from Tarkov. And I also have Kerbal Space Program too. Trying to think. What else do I have? I have like a shitload of games. Okay, so I could go on a whole spiel. That said, I do from time to time do streams. I don't know exactly how to do them though. Is the problem? Like every time I try to do them, I always go, well, shit. What platform? What do I do? Oh, so like here I can roast or I can praise. Maybe next time. But yeah, they'll ask for opinions pretty quickly once they get your teeth sunk into the game. And they'll give you freebies and stuff if you do surveys and stuff like that, in case you're wondering. But yeah, no, like I said, I've been playing Vintage Story 7. That's kind of like a Minecraft clone, but it's a more hardcore Minecraft. So I haven't heard of it. It's a $21 game you can find. It's not bad though. But again, I've been trying to think if I should pivot to those videos or not on my channel. I just haven't really don't know. I've been doing a lot of mobile games, so I've been kind of doing that. But that's a whole different conversation, and I could go into that for a lengthy, long-ass video, but we're not going to do that today. That said, you're talking to somebody that has been playing games since 2007, so everything from Halo to Halo 1, 2, 3, Halo Wars, Halo Reach, Halo ODST to Modern Warfare 1, 2, 3. I've played them all. I've had my fair share of Crusader Kings, Stellaris. I've had my fair share of Total War Rome, Rome 2, Shogun, Shogun 2, and I've even played Warhammer, Warhammer 2. I've also played Dawn of War 1, the original, Dawn of War 2, and then Dawn of War 3 was crap. I tried it, didn't like it. I've been there, done that. I've even played Diablo 3, 4, 2. World of Warcraft, even Elder Scrolls Online, Albion Online. I've played RuneScape. Like I said, I've played a lot of games. In fact, I can even show you some of the art that I've done. I've actually got this game idea, and that was something else that I was thinking about pivoting to. So, like, I could sit down and actually program and make a game. I can even 3D model, do the animation, that whole shebang. Like, I've even thought of doing that. Go into that deal, because I got a lot of knowledge, a lot of different things. There's actually a game I've been playing some too. It's called Meet Your Maker, and it's really good. And that might be something I might even just stream on Kick or something, or Twitch sometime, because that game is funny as hell. I've been building these trap bases, and you get to watch replays of basically people trying to beat your trap bases. I watched this guy last night. It freaking had me laughing because he kept trying to get through my trap base and he couldn't do it, and it was driving him fucking bonkers. I just couldn't help myself. I was laughing so hard. Honest to God, maybe I should just show that. I don't know. I mean, like, I can go at length about this stuff. All right, I can go at length about so many different games and so many different things that it's not even funny. Hell, if you don't know a YouTuber, you need to look at Video Game Donkey, okay? Because Video Game Donkey is funny as hell, and I'm gonna shout his ass out just because I know who he is. And if you don't know and you're a gamer, you need to know who Video Game Donkey is, because that guy is freaking amazing. But that said, I'm only gonna digress on the Whiteout Survival-esque parts of today's video stream, right? I'm going to try to stay on topic a little bit. Naturally, like I said, I can tell you just about everything you want to know on so many different topics on that. I can give you even some game suggestions. I mean, I've got a lot of. I played a lot of games. So this is where VIP comes into play. And so this, if you did this every single day, you'll get your VIP points, and you'll get these packs. Now, a lot of people had asked about this, but should I buy this, and is this worth? And the problem with Natalia is if you're gonna buy Natalia, you got to go buy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 packs. That's the only way to get Natalia, for the most part. That's where that $500 or $600 is coming from, right? And that's just, getting there. That's the problem. You got to get to VIP 6. Not an easy feat to get there. So you're going to spend quite a bit of time getting there. That's where all that money's coming from, though, in case you're wondering. And it's like 20, 50, 100, it gets pretty expensive pretty fast just to get that hero, So is it worth it? The question for that is going to be in our widget. If you're willing to max her out, there's benefit in terms of, I believe, rally lethality with Natalia, but that's about it. The only other benefit is she's pretty good in arena, but that's it. For most people in Gen 1, the only Gen 1 heroes you really should focus on is Geronimo. But that's only because Geronimo is one of the best rally lead-based heroes in the game, but he's also a VIP 12 hero. So unless you're willing to spend a stupid amount of money, we're talking an upwards of $10,000, then you may never see Geronimo, and you may not spend on Geronimo then. Because if you're not dumping that kind of money into the game, or you're not willing to play it for a year plus, you're never going to see the benefit of having Geronimo. So I'm just throwing that out there. Like getting VIP 12, I'm VIP 11, and I can tell you I have 15K, and I'm not even close to VIP 12 yet. Okay, so that just gives you a context of how high. I don't know how high it is yet. I haven't even hit the top there, and I'm already in that far. So, have it what you will, but that's what you're dealing with. It's not cheap. But I can say that because I've been there. I've done that. That said, basically, this is the game, though, is just doing upgrades. And that's really about all there is to it, for the most part, at least in the beginning. Like, you're going to spend most of your time doing this, is just running upgrades, rinse and repeat. Now, of course, you can go into the shop, and of course, as you get a higher VIP level, eventually you can buy yourself XP, 1 hours, 3 hours. You can get 8 hours, stuff like that. I mean, you get all the gems and stuff like that. Of course, you can also get through events like Alliance Championship, for example, you can get items in here. I recommend just getting Polishing Solution. And then if you want, you can get some alloy there, but I would just use whatever's left on the alloy or pick up some speeds if you want. But I almost always grab it for the Polishing Solution. Foundry, what a lot of people will end up doing in here. I think personally, if you ask me, you ought to either pick up designs, because these are really hard to acquire for charms, or you acquire design plans. I think starting out, a lot of people probably should pick up the design plans. And that's really, I think, the most benefit you'll get at a Foundry shop. That said, there's State of Power shop, and I'll show you that on my main sometime. But again, this is all stuff that, when you're starting out, this is all the kind of the gist of the game loop, so to speak. Is you're basically going to go through and upgrade a lot of this stuff, and you're going to use it to upgrade all these items. And like this, you're going to get, access to new heroes and stuff through the hero hall. And again, you don't want to use your gems willy-nilly. Like I said, there's events for that. And like anything in this game, you want to save. So if you get into the habit, you can spend your gems, and that's fine. But don't get into the habit of spending these if you don't have to. If anything, gather for it, and or look for ways to not have to spend. So if you can go attack somebody and steal their resources, and they're not going to come back and hurt you, then do that instead. You don't want to use your backed resources if you don't need to. Same thing for speed ups. You want to save your speed ups as much as you can. And again, we'll get into kind of the gist of the other stuff. Of course, you have VIP time, and VIP time, all that is so you notice how this is great. Well, you don't get the benefits unless you have VIP time. So even the people that are like VIP 10, 12, whatever, do not get these benefits unless they're paying $10 for VIP time that lasts a month. So unless they're willing to spend $10 to have all of these benefits, then they don't have it. So that's one of the problems that you're going to run into, at least when you're playing Whiteout Survival, is that like anything, there is a pay log somewhere, and so this is kind of where you'll always find yourself in a corner in a way. But again, that's just kind of the game loop, and it's just a matter of going through, doing your upgrades, rinse, repeat. But like I said, save your speed ups. Don't get in a hurry. Don't the way they get you is they want to make you want to do everything right here, right now. Everything has to happen right here, right now. And the problem, obviously, is that you get into that habit and you don't really pay attention to events, and that's a mistake because, as you can see, like right now, there's events that are going on even now. And in order to get these events, you need to upgrade a furnace to get those. You need to do stages in order to get those. But the next day, you'll have another set of events to do, and another event, and another event, and so on. And so the point is that if you want to get into the habit of doing anything, do upgrades and such that coincide with these events, and you're going to make the most for your buck. I mean, that's ultimately what you want to do when you're playing Whiteout Survival. The game cherishes the player that is willing to save and plan than the guy that's just like, I'm going to upgrade this today and just, willy-nilly upgrade left and right. As you can see, I am using some of my resources bagged-wise already, right? But that's because we can't go into the world yet. Once we get to the world, I'd say that then my rule's going to apply. But when we're just starting out, we're just clawing our way to get to where we can finally gather. And then when we get to the point where we can gather, then we'll go our separate ways with that rule, and we'll apply our rule from that point forward. Something I guess I can go at length with is, so one of the few heroes that is purple that you're not going to be able to get very easily is Jasser. A lot of people need to upgrade Jasser because you want Enlightened Warfare. It's going to give you 15% research speed. He's the only hero in this entire roster that gives you that. He is the only hero. If I had an opinion on epic shards to be used, it's Jasser. I don't feel you should be using them on any other epic except him. I think he makes more sense than every other epic in this roster. Okay? And that's going long term, if you want my 2 cents. Not even Sergey, Patrick, and Bati, in my opinion, are as beneficial as what you get with Jasser. Because in the long term, you're going to thank me later when you have 15% research speed. It pays itself in the literal amounts of weeks. It is a substantial savings that I don't think you can get with Patrick or Sergey or vice versa. You might be helpful from a PvP standpoint, but you can get most of that from intel. And that is what this little building down here that says Furnace 7 is. It's your intel building. And you just do intel visions, which are nothing more than little mobs that spawn around you that you attack and you get resources from and metals and so on and so forth. And you do that every day. And that's, it's just something you do. That's basically the game loop. There's not really much to it. We're just going to go ahead and use all, since we're on a mission. Damn it, we want to upgrade. We are on the upgrade path today. We need 19,000. So we don't have 19,000, so we have not many choices. So, let's see here. Of course, now they've got the weekly and the weekly cards for the most part. What they are is you get pretty good value out of these over time if you have like several weeks worth. Like if you need stamina on a regular basis, obviously this is the pack that everybody's buying for that VIP time, but it's also giving you stamina and VIP points, which pays out over time. It's over a 30-day period, so it's like, okay, why not? For some people, that if that's all they spend, then that's all they spend. That said, it's just like anything. You can easily throw $100 in this game like chunk change, pretty easily, and it will almost get you nowhere. that's the only other thing too. A lot of people think it's like, oh yes, I'll spend 100 and that makes me God. No, $100 is like, you're out of here. There are literal people that have like 10 grand or 100 grand. So you're like a little fly. You just get right out of the way. It's not even. It's not. I mean, that's why when people consider spending, I throw that warning to you because it is a keep up with the Jonases type mentality in these type of games. So it is very easy for you to feel like, oh, if I just did this, I'll be that much better, and therefore I'll have that much better of an experience. But it won't really amount to anything, like in the sense that you will always have someone better. And so, I mean, while yes, you might be powerful in your state, for example, come state versus state, that'll change. I mean, very frequently, people that find themselves on the top won't always be on top, and especially if they quit spending. And so, in some ways, yeah, you're incentivized to spend on the things that you want, but like anything, it's, what do you spend on? And like I was saying earlier, the most expensive things are in chief gear and charms. Right? That's where you can spend like $1,000 on maxing one thing, and you have three things just like it in there. It's 9 times. So you can easily have like 100 grand. Very, very easily. On the same token though, it's like, does anybody with a sound mind actually do that and spend like a few hundred and still have a good time? Absolutely. But it's just the potential is there. It is a bottomless pit. And that's why I strongly throw those words of caution out there, because I see so many people that I think they get a little too far ahead, get a little ahead of themselves. And then it comes back and it shoots them right back in the foot. And it's just like, well, could have told you that, but oh well. Naturally, I always want to make sure you've got your survivors stocked. I want to make sure you get the most amount of gathering that you can going as much as you can. So like here I have a choice. I can either upgrade or choose not to upgrade. I'll go ahead and get another shelter started so I can get more survivors, and that way I can acquire more survivors to fill. So like that, see, new survivors have come, and now I can just go over here and assign them. That's all you have to do. If you need survivors, that's really about all you do 90% of the time is upgrade your shelters. And then you're right back through the game loop, and you're just off the way you go. There's really not much more to it than that. Now, for those of you that are wondering, like, how do I play Whiteout Survival on my computer, right? You can download BlueStacks. This is what I'm currently using. And it's really pretty straightforward. All you have to do is type in BlueStacks, download it, create an instance, and then type in the search bar Whiteout Survival, install it, and then all you need to do is basically have your account tied to either a Facebook account or a Google account, log in, and then you can hop on. The only thing you can't do is, like if you want to buy packs and stuff, I don't think it works real well. The only other problem is if you want to create a character in a new state, you have to do that on your phone. You cannot do it through the emulator. Those are the only things that you really need to know. I mean, outside of that, it's really, you can always hop on multiple accounts on your emulator on your computer. You're only limited by the amount of RAM and CPU usage. It uses typically 4 gigs of RAM. So if you've got like 16 gigs, that gives you 12. Obviously, you can't run like 3 or 4 of these unless you have a decent computer, like if you have 64 gigs, like I do. Because then I can run like 3, 4, 5, 6, or 8 of these, Because 8 times 4, I've got plenty of memory, so it wouldn't bother me. But, this is the difference. Free-to-play account in my main. So far, it has not been worth the money in my main. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the gist, And it's like, it's one of those things where I think if you play the game casually and you enjoy the game, it's awesome. But like anything, if you put any amount of money into these games, pay to win or otherwise, it's always a game of whoever spends the most. It's not a game of, well, if I play longer, I win. Nah, it's not how that works. I think it's a little deceiving in a way, but there is a strategy, right? There is a strategy component to it, right? Which is to say, if you're playing free to play, you can beat other free to play, right? But if you're free to play fighting a pay to win, you're gonna lose. There's not really anything you can do about it. And that's, that's just something going into these games you just have to know. But at the same token, it's also, it updates frequently. And this is different from free-to-play games and pay-to-win games. Pay-to-win games update all the damn time. They're always changing things, always updating things. They're always making something new or adding something that makes them interesting. And I think that's part of the reason why people play them, is because they're topical too. It's like, well, yeah, you'll have an event for Christmas, you'll have an event for Halloween, you'll have, something new and skins. That's the other thing. So like, if once we get to the world, I can actually show you. We're just not there yet. We have to spend all this time getting there. It's gonna take forever, probably. Unless maybe one time when we have to make an argument to use gems, guys. The one time that we've got to use gems. But this may be the argument for it, because we need to get out of this rut that we're in. And this is our escape card. Well, except for iron, I guess. Oh shucks. I need my iron escape card. I can't get my iron escape card until we're level 2. Well, let's see, if we have 2,000, right? You see the dilemma. If I spend 2,000, I'll get 1,000, but I still need another 1,000, another 500 on top of that. And thus, the struggle of the free-to-play becomes painfully clear. So, what do? Well, you can go to Explorers, and this is what we'll do. This is our way out. And we'll pop on auto. And this is the way out. If you need the resources, this is the way out. This will get us to where we want to be. And this is the dilemma that you often find yourself in Whiteout Survival, more or less. So like here you can see we get some resources. And we'll just fight and do the next one. Rinse, repeat. We'll basically just do this until we can get enough iron. Right now, we're not even at the point of getting iron yet, so we've still got a ways to go. Of course, there is a way we can trade our resources, which we may end up doing, but we're going to try real hard to get to the iron without having to do anything in any massive amount, so hopefully we don't have to worry about it, but we'll see. Anyway, the main thing with Whiteout Survival in particular, though, outside of everything I've already told you, is so like long term, right? And so like let's say you've now been playing the game for about a week, and you've gone through this cycle, you've upgraded your buildings, you're basically survivors at this point become pretty irrelevant after about a week. They're just kind of a number in a spreadsheet. I will say that it's unique to this game because not every game has that element to it. A lot of them are just like upgrade building. In this game it was, upgrade building, assign survivors, and then if you get cold, survivor die. You gotta have to update and maintain your resources to keep things fluctuating, kind of like The Sims in a way. Like you actually have little people that they added life or character to it a little. I feel like they should have added more to it though. Like as somebody that's played like into Furnace level 1 or 2 or 3, I know some people might find it annoying, but I'd be kind of interested in playing the game if it was, hey, snowstorms come by and it just killed all your people. You can't make resources. Or, or it limited things. Or did debuffs to things. Or you've been raided, now your survivors are dead. You're going to need to, little things like that I think could have been interesting had they implemented it. But, these are things that are not actually in the game, so we don't have to sweat that. But I point that out. It's just something that I feel like a thought for them, I guess, a bone to chew on. It's something I feel like they could have added more to, but didn't really, which is fine. It's not really part of the core gameplay loop anyway. But that said, at least in Whiteout Survival in particular, outside of all of the events that you do, which are topical, and it usually depends on the time of the year. Like I think Chinese New Year's coming up in February. So I know there'll be something. There almost always is in these games. It is just a guarantee. There's just like no second but ifs about it. There's almost guaranteed to have it. But it's something that I point this out because it's out there, and naturally, I think a lot of people from time to time think in terms of the here and now and not the long term. But typically, holiday events usually are cheaper. If you are a spender, those are usually the times to do it. So like here, we finally hit our first brick wall. So we'll go ahead and return. And let's see here. So like here, like I was saying earlier, they'll pay you gems and stuff for a survey. So there's that. Here we got another little icon item. Let's see if there's anything. Like here, assign a survivor to the clinic work role. And so there we've got some stuff. Next chapter. And this is the keys. You want to make sure you're doing your chapters, because your chapters, you can see this is where all the iron and everything that I was needing earlier. I'm like, where is it? Where is it? You know, and here I could have claim all. But, you know, either way, this is kind of the directive. This is what tells you where to go, what to do, what have you. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and see, and the other problem with Zen Man is he's not even the most expensive, right? Geronimo is like probably the most expensive, and it's only because you got to be VIP 12 to get him upgraded. Natalia's like, you know, just Natalia alone is like a couple $100 because you got to be VIP 6, plus actually buying her packs, right? But then the widgets themselves are another thing on their own. Like you can easily spend a few $100s just in widgets, just to, you know, have the abilities that come with the widgets. So there's a whole different spiel on that, I guess. In fact, let me just show you, right? So here we've got our character here. Let me show you what a furnace level 3 completely maxed account almost in Gen 2 looks like. And Gen 2 is like 120-ish days into the game. Okay. So this is Flint. He's fully maxed out star-wise. He has 240%. Okay, the skills are all maxed out. So, as I was mentioning earlier, you know, there's a bonus in terms of this skill being applied when you join a rally. So there's a 40% chance of dealing, or 20% chance of dealing 40% damage per turn for 3 turns, which is helpful, but not terribly helpful, right? But the biggest thing with these guys is their widgets, and this is what I mean by the widget. The exclusives, you can spend easily a few $100s just upgrading the widget to 10. And when you do this, the main thing is this key here. Defender troops up by 15. So I get a bonus when he's the lead as a captain. When I'm defending, I'll get 15%. So I'll use him when I'm defending. If I look at Molly, for example, I get defender troop lethality by 15% when I'm defending. Okay? These are all defender related things. You know, if you look at like Philly, for example, your defender troops health goes up by 15 when it's at level 10. You know, again, these are key differences though between lethality and health. Health is obviously, as I was mentioning earlier, health and defense are your defensive items, and attack is your attack and lethality things. So there's that. You know, there's that. Well, you know, somebody will watch it someday, Omar. That's the beauty of it. It's a whole different spiel in and of itself. Clash Royale's ripoff? No. Not even close. This is more like Lords Mobile or Rise of Kingdoms, or well, and not really like Rise of Kingdoms. It's more like Lords Mobile than it is Rise of Kingdoms. It's more, I would say this game, if anything, if you want my 2 cents, this is more of a cross between what they did with, there have been some games like this out there, but the PvE aspect of it is better. So they've done a better job of, like, I think in terms of, you know, how they design the art, I think the skins are a lot better in a lot of ways. The PvE aspect of it is pretty good. But it's, you know, it's basically point and click. You click and attack, much like you do in Lords Mobile. So it's not like Rise of Kingdoms where you can move and march, move around, right? This is kind of what I was trying to get at earlier. This is what's more the late game Because yes, you do have headquarters. I was trying to think of the game, and it adopted pretty much certain ideas from Rise of Kingdoms and Lords Mobile. It's like you have the concept of basically you have forts and facilities that people grab for bonuses for their alliances. Then they have banners where they can, basically what banners are. And for a lot of people starting out, what they don't understand is banners are basically what allow you access to territory so that you can spawn in said territory. The main thing that a lot of people don't know is if you start an alliance for the very first time, you have to acquire these alliance mines, and you also have to acquire alliance farms and alliance. Basically, you need those resources to be inside a banner, so you can generate resources so that you can place those banners. And so you'll use them to basically improve your empire sprawl, so to speak. And so those banners then get used to basically give you territory for your members to spawn in, right? Because anybody that spawns in this territory, okay, an opposing alliance or person cannot spawn in this area. They have to destroy that banner first before they can spawn there. Or teleport there, for that matter. So there's that. The basic gist, though, right? So, like, here is the resource tab. Like, obviously, all the good resources are in the closest part of the center part of the map. The farthest edge, you're going to have the lowest level resources, and therefore the less amount of resources acquired per gather, right? The only other thing that I can really say is, so I was mentioning earlier what the president's role is, and you don't get this until it's almost like a month-ish or so into the game, but you have an event where you fight for Sunfire Castle, and then whoever wins this gets elected president. And then that president has a role where he can then basically appoint people's to give them titles, that give them bonuses, and he can also give negative bonuses to people that he doesn't like. You can also grant, items and commend people, so you can give them extra bonuses once you win. And about the only other thing really that matters as far as Sunfire Castle goes is that during the event itself, whoever owns the turrets is going to do damage to whoever owns the castle. So if you don't want to do damage to whoever owns the castle, then you can actually kick your troops out of the turret before the timer ends, and then it won't do any damage to the person inside the castle. Otherwise, it's like a ticker, and it basically kills a lot of troops while they're in the castle. So there's a whole spiel in that. But yeah. Anyway, so the main thing is, at least with this game in particular, right, is Whiteout Survival's basically got all of these different castles and, different based events that you can do. Kind of like I was saying earlier, the reason why you want to save and the way you kind of keep track of things is you go up to the event tab and you get a calendar, and this will tell you when events are coming up. So like Lucky Wheel, I know, oh hey, I need to save my gems because during Lucky Wheel I'll get flint shards. And you can dump like a little over 120,000 or so gems into Lucky Wheel pretty easy, so you want to save a stupid amount of gems for that. Crossfire Mine is kind of like basically what it is you spawn in and you go around gather other little nodes, and you don't have to worry about losing troops, but basically you just go around and gather nodes, and then you try to get the highest amount of what they call Arstrelashum, and it's just nothing more than a mineral, and you just gather it. So, basically you try to rank in it, and then you get rewards based on that. Alliance Championship is basically alliance versus alliance fighting. So basically you pick 3 lanes, and whoever wins 2 lanes wins. So you'll have up to 30 people per lane, and whoever has the best players in each lane. So if you have the best players in 2 lanes, which is the strategy, then you win those 2 lanes, you win, and you go up and up and up until eventually you either win the championship or you lose, and then you get your rewards and so on and so forth. King of Icefield is basically where they rank you in regards to like other people across the state, so there's a lot of like in-between fighting in terms of arena and so on and so forth. And then you have these little mini events like defeat nearby beasts, where you go around and you just kill the. Yeah, I know. Crazy Joe is kind of like where basically what happens is you'll have an event where at some point your alliance R4s and R5s in your alliance will hit yes to it, and then basically the game will send mobs at your castle. And you want to reinforce your friends to make the most amount of points possible. Typically what people do is they'll dump all their infantry out, and so that way as their troops are getting hit, their marksmen are doing all the damage, and then their infantry are being reinforced by their friends. So the reinforcements are getting points because they're the infantry, and so then you just kind of rinse, repeat around and cycle. It's a whole different strategy, but basically that's the point of Crazy Joe is basically you get a bunch of points for killing mobs that are spawned in, and there's different difficulties for Crazy Joe. Fortress battles is just that. It's literally just, the point where they rotate the forts and you have to have your alliance go out and fight for a fort. Now, like Flame and Fang, you won't get this until about 3 months into the game, but this is where people get something called fire crystals. And you need fire crystals in order to go up past level 30 in the game. And you need like a couple thousand fire crystal to get to fire crystal 1, and then a couple thousand more for fire crystal 2, and a couple thousand more for fire crystal 3. So yeah, as you might imagine, that it's a spender's paradise for that. Foundry Battle is the closest thing to, and Lord's Mobile, this would be kind of like Dragon Arena, but basically it's an event where you going around between a head-by-head alliance, and this is more a true fight where Alliance Championship was like lane fighting. This is actual fighting. Like you actually have to fight for forts and gather, and if somebody knocks you out, you're gonna get spawned to the other end of the map. And Foundry Battle is a lot more cohesive. It's a lot more fighting. So there's a strategy in that. And again, all that kind of information, if you want to know more about it, because this is not really for today's video, but I have a video on Foundry Battle on my channel. You can watch that. Otherwise, go to the Whiteout Survival Discord and look up the guide section for Foundry Battle, and it'll tell you everything you need to know. Outside of that, Hero Rally is, or otherwise known as Hala Chiefs. You've got Hala Chiefs, where basically you just go and do, you eventually Hala Chiefs gets replaced by King of Ice Build, I'm pretty sure. But the basic gist is that you're going to be getting rewards for one of the heroes. So basically the 3 heroes that come out in every rotation, you'll have one that shows up in Hall of Heroes, which you'll go into the deals section. There'll be a hero in Hall of Heroes. There'll be one for Hall of Chiefs, or King of Icefield, and then you'll also have a hero for the Lucky Wheel, which is Flint. And so each rotation is going to have a Lancer, a Marksman, and an Infantry. Every rotation is going to basically play on those 3, and then every couple set amount of days. Usually, and there's actually a state timeline, so if you want to know a full timeline of like when things are going to unlock, where you are in the game, so on and so forth, again, just go to the Whiteout server. Whiteout Survival Discord, because basically there you can actually see the server timeline. And so if you wanted to know like where you are in relation to the entire game, you can just go to the very beginning of the monument, and it'll tell you what date you were, and you just take that date minus whatever your current date is, and that'll tell you what your server age is. And then you can just look at the server timeline, and it'll tell you what will effectively be coming up in the game. So yeah, a lot of information, a lot of info dump there. I guess you don't get beasts until a little ways into the game. This is like it's like a 2 month and week. It's about 2 months and a week into the game you'll get beasts. And then this is where you basically upgrade them and you get skills. And then those skills give you access to, free stamina or free resources if you gather. And it doesn't matter what. This skill's really badass, by the way. Really good. This is a really cool skill. Because basically I can gather a level 8 node that's 14 million and it'll gather it in an instant. Just super cool, right? And then you can also get yourself, you need pet food in order to upgrade them, so you need that. There's a whole different set of things for upgrades there. Are there any speedrunning groups? Oh hell, I have no idea. I'm sure there are. I don't know of any though, but I'm sure there are. As far as the other buildings go, So the embassy, which was the building I was wanting to show you earlier, basically the embassy is where you get your assists. So this is what helps you whenever you're doing upgrades. This is what increases the amount of helps you get. It's also what increases the amount of people that can reinforce you. This is pretty crucial whenever you're going out and about and eventually you start getting into the PvP aspect of the game. Because generally speaking, people that go around, and even whales in the game, you should never solo somebody. If you want to attack somebody, rally them. Do not solo them. You'll find that you'll lose more troops that way. I'm just saying because I've done it. And yes, you can do it. Yes, big whales can do it. If it's a 200% attack and you have 800% attack, yes, the guy has 200. He's going to lose a lot. Okay? But hear me out. Generally speaking, you're going to find that if you get paired up with somebody that's 600 or 700% and you're 600 or 700% and you send an attack on them, you're going to lose 70, 80% of whatever the heck you sent. You're going to wind up losing more troops. It's not a good idea. Yeah, really bad idea. Don't do that. So way too many people do that and then they go, "Well, it's like, well, don't do that." Man, it's like, I could have told you that, but you just, you just don't do that. But anyway. And command center is where you, obviously this is where you increase your troop deployment and your rally capacity, as I had mentioned earlier. Storehouse is where you basically, it increases the cap on the amount of resources that are saved. So if you get attacked, this is what prevents a certain amount of resources from getting completely depleted. I want to say the lighthouse, as I had mentioned earlier, this is where you go around and basically you just pick up freebies. And you use stamina to do it, so you just go around and hit monsters. Like these here you won't see in the early, these ones that look like little antlers. You don't have these starting out. These are only going to show up once you actually get to Fire Crystal Age. But basically they just give you fire crystals. And so you just go around and attack them. And that's, it's a little small loop that you do every day. What's an easy way to tell the others how the rally captain and how the leaders work so we can buff properly? Easiest way to do this is really just to have that conversation early on and go into the chat and just tell people like how the game even works. Just like I'm doing in this video. Like, just do that. Just explain to them. Because I can tell you like right now, every time you see somebody, the first leader is Molly, I go, well, you're doing it wrong. Okay, if you're going to join rallies, send Jesse. And if you had to actually had to absolutely send something, even Jasser at 25% is fine, right? Because looking at Jesse or Jasser, okay, the principle here is the same. All right, but you don't want to do that. The guy that sends Molly is doing it wrong, because it doesn't add anything. It's not actually contributing anything. And if you're sending the rally and you're the rally captain, you also need to be wary of these widgets that I was referring to. Okay, because the widgets are important because if, like I was saying, if I attack somebody, rally troop attack, okay, versus defender troop attack are two different things. I can use Flint when I'm defending, or I can use Zenmen when I'm defending. I can use Molly whenever I'm attacking. Because I know that when I'm looking at this, right, if I'm attacking with Molly, I go, defender bonus, that doesn't do me squid. Okay, so if I'm defending, it makes sense to have Molly, right? It doesn't make sense if I'm attacking. That's the difference between what they call a garrison hero and a rally hero. That's why there's that difference. It's because that is the difference. Whenever you're the rally captain, you need to know these things. Okay? Because if you look at Natalia, like I was saying earlier, the benefit of Natalia is that, yeah, there's a rally troop lethality increase by 15. All right? It's only if you need lethality, though. If you don't need the lethality and you'd rather have the attack, most people get Geronimo. It's just what benefits you most. A lot of people, when they're defending, are going to use Patrick, because Patrick, for his first skill, is going to give 25% HP health. Which, again, going back to those stats again I was telling you about, you have health and defense for defending, and then you have lethality and attack when attacking. Again, it's not that they're irrelevant, but when you're attacking, typically you want to increase these two, and when you're defending, you're typically wanting to increase these two. And when you're defending, you typically have higher Lancer counts, and when you're attacking, you typically have higher marksman counts. Now, that is not to say you want to ignore your infantry. Your infantry are the front line. That is universal across the board. You always want to have a pretty decent amount of infantry, because if you don't, you're going to find yourself suffering. And I don't care if you're attacking or defending. That's just across the board. So what do you think a lot of people tend to spend their money on? Infantry. Why? Because infantry are the ones that die the most, so you lose the most. Now, as far as whether or not should I upgrade or promote or buy or blah, 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 okay. The answer to that question has always been highest tier possible. If you can upgrade them, great. If you can promote them, great. So if you got 1,700, you can promote. Get them to the highest tier possible. Do not have a bunch of small level 1, 2, 3, 4. Get rid of them. Promote them all the way to the highest level as soon as you possibly can. The reason why is because the smallest level troops will get in your infirmary. Your higher level ones will not make it in there, and they will die. So do yourself a favor. Promote all the way until you got them all maxed out, then max out from that point forward. And then once in a while, you'll get those troops like from those little camps from Intel, and then you'll promote and you get a nice little batch of troops. And you just rinse and repeat. That is the cycle. That is what you do. There is no ifs, buts about it. Okay, now you do have something called the Chief's House. If you don't know what this is, basically these are buffs. Use double time whenever you're going to plan on upgrading something. Pop double time. You got a 20% boost to your construction. Okay. This is what you want the next 5 minutes whenever you're doing upgrades. If you are of the opinion of I want to make resources on a regular basis, you're gonna proc productivity day, urgent mobilization, rush job, festivities in that cycle. Rinse, repeat every single day, because that's just gonna buff the amount of resources you gain, and that's it. That's all there is to it. That's the cycle. That's basically all you're doing for resources. Otherwise, outside of that, you go around and you send gatherers. And I usually do only search for full resources if I can, but typically you try to get whatever you can get. And outside of that, really about all I can think of outside of everything I've told you, I guess, is there are buffs. So like there's lethality, there's troop attack, and so on. This is a multiplier to your current stats. So think of this as used as a multiplier. There's also the buff, and that gets added into that multiplier. Okay, so like a buff that you have there is getting added onto. So if you have 15%, you're going to do 0.515 plus 0.2, and then multiply off of that. That's how that works. Whenever you're wanting to know, well, how does that apply to my stats? Like that's how that works. And again, if you don't know what I mean, go to the Discord. You will find the information on this. I've even made videos over this, and I'm pretty sure there are even pictures of this out there that you can find that'll explain that in better detail, but that's incredibly important to know. I'm trying to think of what else is there that I can poke my brain on. As far as packs go, I will tell you that if you're wanting to spend money in the game in any capacity, obviously in the late game, there's a lot of packs. And the game's got lots of options for you. You can spend money and money and money and money until the end of time, and you'll probably never ever find yourself full. So like, if and when you want to pick what packs are best, which ones are good, I would tell you my suggestion for that is think in terms of the holidays and pick around times like Mia's Fortune, or think around times where you can get multipliers and bonuses during that time. But always think in terms of what can I do to save? Because you want to save speed ups, you want to save resources, you want to save your shards, and you want to save because events will give you bonuses for using them, and then you'll get more on top of that because you ranked in the event. Okay, so that's one thing that's incredibly important. So what about troop ratios and figuring out what type of troops to send or rally based on stats? Okay, so like for example, as I was saying earlier, let's say I'm going to attack somebody, right? I'm just going to pick this one as an example. All right. You can, generally speaking, get away with sending even as long as you're not sending any of these troops. Obviously, if you hit equalize, that's bad. Don't do that. Don't ever send low tier troops. You're that person. Everyone hates you. But out of whatever this amount is, right? As I was saying earlier, a lot of people like to do a kind of something akin to like a 60-20-20 or a 50 Like, it's always catered around the idea of having more infantry and then a little bit less of the other two unit types, or otherwise just keep them even, right? But as I was saying, if you're defending, typically you're going to want more marksmen if you're attacking, and you're going to want more lancers if you're defending. So you may cater to, oh, okay, well, instead of doing 20-20 here, I might do 10-20 and then, or 10-30, so on, right? The idea is always to have a lot of infantry, though. You typically don't want to have less infantry. You always want infantry. You just want to improve or decrease these two numbers depending on what you're doing. And that percentages, I can't really give you a percentage myself because a lot of the time I just send even, if I'm honest. I typically let the game even those troops out and I just send even because I very rarely ever find myself in a composition situation. It doesn't come up that often. And when it does, it's because, it's like the composition of the rally is screwy, right? Or the composition of the garrison is screwy. I typically don't have to adjust it because if I stay even, I'm okay as the rally cap. But if I'm the person joining the rally and I don't have my troops are all freaking all sorts of whack, right? I think the best you can do is send an even march if you don't know what to send. But if you do know what to send, right, and you know that, hey, we're defending. Typically, if you're defending, and sending more lancers is probably more beneficial. More infantry, more lancers. Marksman's probably not as important. But this is why I point this out, because I think a lot of people get so tied up in all of that, and it's like I myself don't even know really on the ratios exactly. I just know the general rule of thumb is that. That much I do know. And I'm of the opinion that if you're doing something akin to like a 50-40-30 or some variation of that, your ratios are always going to vary ever so slightly, but something similar to that is probably going to adhere to that logic whenever you're doing infantry, lancers, and marksmen, and vice versa. That said, gosh, where else do I poke? I guess the other thing is, so I was telling you about it earlier. So the state of power shop, and here when you win, you can get more fire crystal. But I think typically what most people ought to be doing, I for one am a big fan of charm designs and charm guides because I know what charm guides and charm designs are for. It pays out dividends in the long term. And then the next best thing is fire crystals. To me, these are the three things I care about most. If you're doing chief gear, design plans are a pretty good vote for that. If you're working on, hey, you don't have a lot of manuals, then yeah, I'd say probably picking up manuals probably wouldn't be a bad place to pick them up at, right? But I'm of the opinion fire crystal is a very important asset in the long term, and so getting those is more of a priority to me than, say, having a bunch of books on hand, even though, yes, I have a bunch of books on hand. But, that is pretty much everything, I think. I don't think I can really digress at any amount of... I don't know, maybe there's more, but I can't think of anything at this moment. So, I mean, that's most of the game's loop. I mean, yeah, there's the fishing hunt, but that's, you basically, that's pretty simple. You just dive down, avoid the fish. Get to the bottom, pick up the rare ones. Back up, rinse, repeat. There you go. It's like I said, I don't think you really need to pick up those books, but, I ain't going to be... Well, about the only other advice, I guess, is an arena. You always want to wait until the server reset. It's like, you want to wait until, like, the last half hour. That's about when you want to actually try ranking. If you try to do it, like, 4 or 5 hours into it, you'll be lower. So if you want to save yourself, don't, get too crazy. If you want to see my lineup, you'll notice I have 3 infantry, and then 1 of each. I'm trying this out to see how well this works. I can just as easily quick deploy and play around with this. But I'm trying this out to see how well this works, and it seems to be okay, because not everybody has 3 infantry. Right? That's another strategy you could employ here, is that you could go a little top-heavy on one type, or a little low-heavy on go 2 on each type. And you can play around with it. You can even try 3. And so... in some ways more than one. There's no wrong answer there. You can really kind of play around with what works. It's one thing that's fun about Arena when you get more heroes. Yeah, I'm using BlueStacks. I will say the con to BlueStacks is it's heavy on the ads. I used to use Nox for a long time, and I like Nox because it wasn't heavy on advertising. There's also Mimu, and Mimu's pretty good. And you can use Mimu, and that's another emulator. Those are three that I can tell you off the top of my head that are I would recommend if you're looking for an Android emulator play on your computer. The main thing is you need about 4 gigs of RAM to dedicate to it. Yeah, sure. It's just basically all you got to do in order to set this up is just type into Google BlueStacks, download it, install it, and then when you've installed it, what I recommend doing is on Windows 11, it's a little tricky, but basically you'll have to right-click, run it as an admin in order to get it to work properly. Because a lot of its functionality runs on effectively what is known as the... Because what it is it's basically a simulator. It's a sandbox environment. It's a virtual machine, basically. That's what it is. So in order to set those up, sometimes you need administrative privileges to get around some of the problems. The main thing is you want to set it up. In my case, I'm using a Pi 64 OS when I created my instance, but you can set that as Android 11, or you can even set it as Nougat x64, but you want to be in 64-bit if you can. And then you just, once you've actually got the game downloaded, all you'll do is just go up to search and just type in Whiteout Survival. That's really all there is to it. Download it, play the game. And then as far as getting the account logged in and everything like that, I mean, obviously when you first log in, the first thing you'll do is once you've logged in, got through the tutorial, all that jazz, go up to the profile up here, go to settings, and then log into your account. The main thing is on your phone. Make sure you've got that tied to a Google account or a Facebook account or some way of getting into it, because when you log into this, it's going to need to know what email address you used, and you'll have to log in using that email address. Whatever method of logging in that you used at the time for the game on your phone. That's what you'll use to get onto it on the PC. I hope that's enough. I do have a video that I was going to upload for that, but I found one little hitch in my search, so I may have to redo it, I think. But it's something that I'll have a video on, and I can kind of showcase like how that works. But it should, what I just said, it should work that way. And if you have any trouble, I think the biggest thing is just make sure you run it as an administrator. And then the only other things I recommend that, like at least on here in particular, right? You go to the settings icon over here, and you can set your performance. So I always like to set mine to high, enhanced, set your display, your cursor style, all that jazz. And then in here, you can actually go and set your speakers. You can even set up like a desktop icon for it. And again, you can even set keybinds. There's a lot of different things you can do. In fact, a lot of people don't realize that, if you've ever wanted to do macros and stuff, you can do that in BlueStacks. All you gotta do is go up to open macro manager. Which, of course, you guys don't see the macro manager, but it's this little bar right here. And then you can set up macros. So if you're like, hey, I don't want to click this every 5 frickin' minutes, yeah, you could just set up a macro and click. And yeah, I know it's probably frowned upon, and yeah, I know. I'm sure the developers are going, don't you dare tell them that. But hey, well, it's there. It's always been there. Been there for years. And I know people that'll. I'm not. I wish I was lying, but there are people out there, and I think it is a bannable offense. But I don't know how many of them are actually getting persecuted for it. But there are people that'll just set up accounts and then just set them to click help, and that's all they do. And they'll just set up 6 or 7 instances of BlueStacks and have all 7 accounts sit there and hit help, just so that way they got helps all the time. We call those bots, and it's a frowned upon practice, but there are plenty of them out there in games like these. Whether they're little bots like that to fully fledged programmed AI bots, which they do exist, but like everything out there. If you ever hear of download this APK and get free gems, that's malware. So save yourself the trouble and don't download shit off the internet. I'm going to tell you right now, it's an easy way to a lot of pain, like losing your email, your password, and a lot of other things. So you want to save yourself and you want some IT advice. Set up MFA on your email. Do not use the same password on every email and every account and every website you go to. Don't do that. Bad habit. Don't do it. If you do it, stop and change them now. Outside of that, if you set up MFA on your phone, if you don't know what MFA is, it's multi-factor authentication. Google it and look it up. But you can do Google, you can do Microsoft, whatever method you want to do on your phone. Set it up with your email and it'll save your life. I promise. Save you a lot of hassle. Just, life advice. But hey, and take my 2 cents for it. It'll save your rear more than once. Saved mine many times. Can't do shit when you have it. Many people do not do that, and then wonder why the hell they did not teach them this in school. It's because it's a new thing. It's one of those part of the modern era, part of this decade. It wasn't a thing a decade ago. A decade before that, they didn't even consider it in their security when they were writing software. So, it's just something to think about it, man. It's worth it. Life advice. It's kind of like your bank account and a lot of other things. If you don't want to lose it, I suggest you do that. Now, a lot of people don't realize your phone is a good place for malware. It's a wonderful place for a hacker to get access to your passwords, your phone, your bank account, your credit cards, all that fun stuff. So if that's something that scares the shit out of you, it should. I just say that because I have seen so many people that are real good about hygiene on their computer, but never once do they sit there and think about the one computer that is literally in their hand. It is not rocket science to figure out that might be something you got to be a little careful about. That's why I suggest having these things, because it saves your keystring in the end, That said, outside of all the advice I've given you today, as far as Whiteout Survival goes, now you might be wondering, is this game for me? Should I even play the game? I've played the game for about 4 months, roughly. I will say that my experience with Whiteout Survival so far has been really fun, right? It's been enjoyable. I've met a lot of cool people, a lot of fun friends and such. I played Lords Mobile for about 8, maybe 7 to 8 years straight. And that's one of the worst pay-to-win games of all time. That game is the worst pay-to-win game of all time. I don't think there's a worse game out there. Even it might be, but it's honestly taken the crown for the most amount of money spent for like heroes in the game. Like that game, $100,000 is nothing. And way too many people that'll spend like $100,000 plus. It's not uncommon in that game. It's actually scary. But the reason why and kind of the history behind that, I can get into detail. But like in a lot of these games, there's a lot of botting, a lot of people that when they have these games accessible by Epic, Steam, and cryptocurrency apps, that's where you find a lot of money laundering starts showing up. So when you start looking at accounts and you go, oh, that seems suspicious. Why the heck is it that guy's like 100 mil day one? It's like, well, that's probably because that money isn't legit. That's probably why. A lot of that's coming from drug dealers, money launderers, you name it. And they're getting away with it because they'll, go through and steal people's, they'll go and, buy gift cards and shit like that. And that's the basic gist of why those people exist, right? So when you're sitting here playing Keeping Up in the Jonases, just bear in mind that some of that stuff ain't hard to earn people's money. Some of these people even actually take a business budget, I've heard, and take an advertising budget for a company that has tens of thousands of dollars and dump it into these games, simply because that they can get kickbacks from the advertising that they get, which is free, from all the players that will look at their account, and then their name brings notoriety, and therefore has its own, capital in itself because of all the notoriety that comes with it. That said, with everything I've told you, is Whiteout Survival a fun game? I think Whiteout Survival is fun. I think in terms of the PvP aspect of it, it's just like Lords Mobile. It's like a lot of the games in this genre. It's not really expensive compared to some. So it's a lot more for a mid spender to low spender. This game is a lot easier to pick up. It's a lot more enjoyable in that way, but it's also got the same problem that a lot of those games have, which is to say they have power creep as they create more states, as they have more people join and then leave. Your state dies, and then you find yourself in a rut. State transfer is like their latest solution to this, but eventually, I think they've even mentioned server merges and stuff, which may be a thing down the road. I would say really about the only thing I can say that, the plus side is the PvE. The PvE side of this game is a lot of fun. There's a lot of events. There's a lot of things that you can do, whether that be Bear Trap, Crazy Joe. I was just showing you that calendar. It's always got something to do. Always something to do, and there's always something. So if you're looking for a time killer, it's a great time killer. And if you're wanting to do the PvP side of that, I mean, yeah, it's going to cost some money if you want to go ahead and ruin someone else's experience. It's not going to be cheap. And like I was saying, there are efficient ways to do this, and then there are inefficient ways to do this. But outside of that, I would say really, like a lot of these games, this is a huge improvement on games like Lords Mobile and the fact that they have a banner system, they have better territories. The concept of allies, though, it's still, I don't know why in these games, and it's been pushed over and over and over, but I'm surprised they don't have a system of how you could dictate who's on your side and who's not on your side. Allies are always set up unofficially through NAP agreements and stuff like that, but yet in a lot of these games they fall short of that. Not sure why. Never made any sense to me, because it seems like a lot of alliances do this in person, or they use their guild board for that, but it seems to me like a void that's never been filled, and players have always done it themselves. Like anything, this is a point and click game. One of the disadvantages, I think, in this game is that, like, if I want to attack this guy and make it like this, like 1 second, I can do that. One thing that a lot of people don't realize, though, is that you can block just about anybody through shielding. So you get 5 free 8-hour shields, and that's a week. You don't get very many of these. The biggest downside to this is it's 4,000 gems for every 24 hours. So if you constantly find yourself under threat or under attack, it doesn't really work so well. One of the downsides. Do people attack each other very frequently? No, but when they do, it screws your day up pretty bad, pretty massively. Outside of that, though, I think that's really about what I can say about the game's overall options. In terms of skins and stuff like that, so there's many different skins, and I would say I can rank these skins. I'll go ahead and just rank them off the top. So you have Forge Town, you have Winter Plenty, Air Arena of the Stars, Night of the Watch. Out of all of these skins, so far my personal favorite out of all of these on a day-to-day, and I think Dream of Atlantis is like the most interesting one, right? But I honestly really, really, really like and I'm just going to go from the top 10, right? I think the Helios Outpost is my number 1. I think this is the coolest one. You get like a little furnace at the top. My second one is the Forge Town, because I think Forge Town's really cool. You get steam, you get fire coming out. Then the third one, and my favorite, was the Arena of Stars, because I think it's really cool to have like a giant metal fist. That to me is pretty cool. You can earn this just by being number 1 in Arena at the end of the week, so it's a really cool thing. I actually had it for a short while. The fifth one, I think, is Night of Watch. I think this one's really cool in terms of having a night and having a torch. It's really cool. Of course, then that's where I'll put Dream of Atlantis being number 6, and then the Halloween one for number 7. For number 8, Celestial Palace looks really cool. So it's like a flower and a bunny, which is pretty neat. And then Gingerbread House for number 9. And then for number 10, I put Lost City. I don't care for Children's Wonderland as much. I don't like Pyros or Bunny Castle as much, or Windmill Village as much. There's those skins that I'm not too big a fan of. Bonafide, this one's just weird. This might be the worst one. Having a giant turkey on your base is just awkward. Just weird. But overall, as far as the city skins go, that's my opinion on the skins. Now, the marching skins, of course, you have the Santa sleigh, you have a giant walking turkey with a fork and a spoon, you have a jack o' lantern with a pair of wheels and root hands, you have a bunny hopping inside a lunar something. I don't know what the heck you'd call that. You have a dodo bird with a person sitting on it, a whale steamboat looking thing, and then an actual steamboat thing. Then you have a unicorn, which I think hands down might be the coolest one because it's so out of place. Then you have bunny special forces, which is a bunny in an egg cart. You have, of course, this one, which one is pretty cool. You get this one if you own the actual. If you become president, you get this, which is pretty cool. Of course, there's Knights of Conquest, which is, basically that. There's Sunseeker Express, which you get that from State of Power if you win or lose. It doesn't matter. You get State of Power. It's the train basically. Then you have the turret, and I'm not really sure where you get Thunder Cannon at yet. But I know you get it somewhere. And then you have the snowmobile, and then you have the elephant, and then the plane. So overall, my opinion on these, as far as which one's best out of the top 10, I'm gonna put the unicorn as number one because I hands down think that is just that is the most awkward but awesome skin for a March ever. It's like the most awkward, interesting one out of all of them, and I have to put that at number one just because it's so interesting. Then the Flagon, which I think is really cool, but only so many people can have it. Then believe it or not, I like the mammoth more than I do the turkey. I like the mammoth. Then I like the Sunseeker Express. Then the turkey. Then the plane. And then for 8, I like the Jackmobile. And then for number 9, the Wish Express. And then number 10 is kind of, this is where I kind of sit here and go, well, which one do I rather have? Would I rather have Knight of Conquest or would I rather have the whale? I'm of the opinion I'd rather have the whale for number 10. And that's just for marching skins. And that's just the current marching skins right now. Now, for nameplates, I don't really know if I can rank the nameplates, but I will say which one I think is the best out of all of these that are out there. And out of all the nameplates, the only one that I thought was like really interesting, at least for me anyway, is again a lot of different nameplates, right? But this one I think could be the most interesting, topical for me, because I like to go by shark. And I like sharks. So for me, the hat and the anchor is kind of a selling point for me. I'm not going to rank the other ones because that to me is just my pick. As far as these go, though, these animate, which are pretty cool. So you've got, kind of a whole variety of different ones. As you can tell, you got one for Valentine's Day, different events. Out of all of these, I, again, kind of cater to my inner... Like, I'd rather have this one over the anchor, though. That's the only difference. I like this one more. That one's cool. But then, of course, you have the other ones, as you can see. But overall, I'd rather have that frame. That frame, I think, is the coolest one. I'm going to try and get that one when I can. But that's all I'm fishing on. Anyways, so that is pretty much the skins and stuff like that. And then these are, the current Gen heroes and Gen 2 that you'll get after like a couple months. Eventually, you'll get access to the Gen 3, Gen 4, Gen 5, Gen 6. And there is T11. So that there's a whole spiel in that. But outside of that, really, that's Whiteout Survival. That's everything I know, everything I've seen. And this is pretty much the stream, I think, for the day. I think I'm going to move on to probably a different game. Oh, my goodness. I'm losing my voice already because I talk so much, but that's it. Hopefully that teaches you a thing or two if you haven't played Whiteout Survival. It gives you a pretty good picture of everything in the game. Tells you everything you need to know, in my opinion. I would say if there's anything else you need to know, I'd say really alliance-wise, you've got R4s, R5s. Obviously, you pick up your chests, you fight for battles and territories and such. And the tech tree is really straightforward. You just grab tech, and that's really all you got to do. I heard you. And I have a cat that's now waiting on me, so I have to call it quits for the stream, guys. But I'll pick it up. I'll probably be playing Meet Your Maker on maybe Twitch or Kick here in a bit. So if that's something you want to watch and you want to join me on, just look up Dakanoth on either Kick or Twitch, and you'll find me there. But I believe I'm gonna go on to probably Twitch this time around. So, needless to say, thank you guys for dropping by, and hopefully this was insightful and helpful. So, see you guys.